So Garnacho's days at Chelsea are over. He's made the move now to Aston Villa. It's gone through as expected. It would go through at some point this week, and it went through in the end yesterday. And to be honest, I have to say I'm pleased that this has happened. To be honest, I'm pleased that we've got this player off our books, and it's a shame, but it had to happen. I think it reached a point of no return here. I mean, where did it go so wrong under Garnacho? 40 million we bought him for, and the fee that we could get eventually from this transfer is 43 million. So pretty much what we paid, we're going to get back. Aston Villa are going to take on his wages for this season. So to be perfectly honest, we've not really lost anything here. Really, this is a flop signing, to be perfectly honest. But it's one that we've not actually. It's one that the money we paid, we got straight back pretty much. So I think, to be honest, this could have worked out a lot worse. And it's a shame because this is a player we was linked with for many years. It's a player that's come through at United, was such a promising young player at Man United. And a few years ago, I remember going back about 3 years ago, where he first started to be in and amongst the first team, where he would come on sometimes, he would get late goals, he's an impact player, he looked just, this player that was just so hungry and would just come on and make, such a nuisance of himself. He really would cause such a problem for teams, and he just seemed like a nightmare player for oppositions. He just seemed like he was. I remember thinking when I first saw Garnacho sort of break out into the Man United team, I was thinking that's the type of player I'd love at Chelsea. Someone who's sort of come through the academy, broke into the first team, and really has this almost plays with a bit of an edge about him, but has can have an impact on the game as well. And I thought his first, his seasons at Man United, I thought fantastic. I thought his the second season, we really started to see him a lot in the first team, 23-24 season. I thought he was brilliant, and I thought he wasn't playing enough. And I thought at times, maybe the club didn't seem to value him that as much as they should have done. And coming into the season before last, 24-26 season, sorry, 24-25 season, we saw him feature. I think that was where things started to sort of fall apart. With his sort of relationship with Man United, there was a lot of issues with going on in the dressing room behind the scenes and stuff. And these are things that there was a sort of theme emerging that maybe could be quite problematic. A lot of United fans that previously really liked him were happy to see the back of him. And I thought, so the warning signs were there. He's obviously linked with Napoli as well. And for a while, we were sort of in a bit of a bidding war with Napoli, and in the end it sort of all went a bit quiet, but we was able to get it over the line, this deal, towards the end of last summer transfer window. And at the time I was really happy about it. I thought this is a really, really good signing. Overall I was pleased about it. I thought, there's question marks about his attitude and about his sort of how he is among the dressing room, but his quality, I thought, with seeing at United, I thought was undeniable. And I thought this is a great player to have in the squad. It's not only someone who he's a good player to bring off the bench on occasions as well. Like, he can have an impact, and I really thought this could work out really well. But early days under Maresca, this clearly wasn't. I think that was when we was managed by Maresca, and I think one thing was clear: this clearly wasn't a Maresca signing. This is a Chelsea. This is the signing that the board made, and this wasn't a player Maresca wanted, and I think that was obvious from the start because they didn't seem to get on from the start, and I think you could tell just by small interactions on the touchline, little things like Garnacho not shaking his hand or just walking straight past him when he's been taken on times when he was taken off and whatnot, and he didn't seem to get much game time under Maresca as well, and it did seem like a bit of a problem there already, that his days could be numbered, his days could be over before they even started at Chelsea. It just seemed like the club had signed a player here that the manager didn't actually want, and it was. Yeah, so there was something, but it seemed doomed right from the start, to be honest. And because of the type of player Garnacho is, he's certainly not going to want to be sitting on the bench. He's someone who I certainly get the impression now that he feels he should be starting every week. And yeah, so there was clearly something not right with him and Maresca's relationship from the start. But at the times he did feature Garnacho, we saw some quality. We saw that fantastic goal against Sunderland, some decent Champions League performances. But overall recorded 4 assists throughout the entire season. But the stats were seriously underwhelming. And okay, there was a lack of game time. But overall, in that first half of the season under Maresca, when he did get the opportunities to play, it was underwhelming. And I think we saw. And there was moments where I thought maybe he'd turn it around. Like, he didn't play for ages under Maresca. He just did not fancy him. And then finally he gets on against Cardiff and he gets us through in that game in the League Cup just before Christmas. But then you see Maresca clearly didn't want him because he doesn't have him in the team in the next game after that. Maresca eventually gets sacked, and that was the thing. You're thinking, okay, could Garnacho be revived here a bit? And well, again, Rosigne gives him the opportunities. It didn't really happen, but a lot of players really didn't perform under Rosigne, and from eventually got to a point with Garnacho where he was barely playing anymore. He's just a squad player, would sometimes feature, and there's be times where he just wasn't even in the squad towards the end of last season. And it was quite clear that okay, his days are done, and it's quite clear that he can be a problematic player in the dressing room, and it's quite clear that the relationship between him and the club had completely fallen apart. So an exit this summer was going to happen for sure. And I think, he just seems to be a player that wherever he goes, there seems to be some sort of trouble. There seems to be some sort of problem. There was talks that we could loan him out. At one point, there was talks that we could loan him out to River Plate midway through last season. There was also talks of Atletico Madrid being interested in a loan, or maybe even buying him. But in the end, in this transfer window, we was only interested in the permanent sale. If we would only consider any sort of move, any sort of transfer for him, if there's a permanent thing attached. The club wanted to sell him permanently, and I think you can see why. And in the end, it was Aston Villa. Roma were interested. The team that's in the Champions League next season, another team that, like Aston Villa, they're in the Champions League. They were interested in making this signing, but what we valued him at around 40 million, they didn't seem willing to pay because they put in bids, but it obviously wasn't close to what we wanted because we eventually reached no agreement with them. And in the end, Aston Villa approached us over a loan move. Emery believes that he can get him up and running again. It is a team, so Villa get him on a season-long loan, but with an obligation to buy, and this is what we needed, not an option to buy, an obligation to buy on the contract, which will be activated if certain terms are met. I don't know whether it's a certain amount of minutes played or whatever it is. The club wants shot of him, so they're quite clearly confident that whatever these terms are will be met quite easily, and this transfer will be made permanent on a 4-year deal for a 43 million fee next June, where the transfer window will open next summer. That seems like pretty certain that's going to happen because they've pretty much said already at Garnacho and Chelsea that's done now. And of course, it's a shame, but I think at this point it's necessary. I think I don't see a way back. I didn't see a way back for him at Chelsea, to be perfectly honest, and I think a lot of people will agree. He seems to be one of those players that just seems to cause problems everywhere he goes, unfortunately. But we'll see how he gets on at Aston Villa. But that's a player that's off the books now. Villa are taking on his wages for next season. So, to be honest, and we've not really lost anything much out of this. It could have worked out. These transfers that you make that fail have worked out a lot worse for us in the past. So, not feeling too bad about that one. But Garnacho Chelsea just did not work out whatsoever. Now, Alex Scott is a player we've been linked with. It's a player that a lot of clubs have been interested in. I spoke about this in the video yesterday, actually. The bid that we put in that was turned down, apparently, which I wasn't sure about the amount, how much that was yesterday, and which eventually led us to walk away, was 64 million. And I'm glad we did walk away at this point and not up it to 70, which I was hearing could happen because apparently they would have turned that down as well, which is getting a bit ridiculous now. Alex Scott's a very good player. I really rate Alex Scott. I really like Alex Scott. I really would have liked to have had him at Chelsea. I really rate him when he was at Bristol City as well. I think his development has been impressive over the last few years. I think since he's gone to Bournemouth, I think he's taken the step up really well. Still only 23, a really young player. So again, no rush to leave Bournemouth, especially as they're in Europe next season as well. So he's going to get that experience as well. He's playing under a new manager as well that clearly really wants him there. Marco Rose has said already, I don't want him to leave. We don't want this player to leave. We want him to, and he even said as well, it could even sort of hinder his own career, making that big move too soon. So I don't think it's a bad thing for him to stay at Bournemouth for another season. He doesn't seem to want to sign a new contract though. He wants to move to Chelsea, but 70 million, I think, they want more than that. Then I think that's just, it's getting to the point now where I think even in today's transfer window, I think that's too much. So I can see why we have walked away from that one. I think we've done the right thing there, and I think Bournemouth here, they've priced him out the market pretty much. Although if he doesn't want to sign a new deal and they do end up selling him later in the window, then they might end up having to settle for less than this. They might regret not accepting the 64 million bid that we put in, but that does seem like that could be over now, especially if us interested in Lacroix, that being the priority. Palace wanting at least 55 for him. As I said yesterday, they want similar amounts of what Spurs played for Van Hecken. with this being a similar profile of player. And John Stones as well could be a very interesting free transfer, certainly one I would be keen on. I know he's got that injury problems, of course, but I do think free transfer definitely worth a punt. Not sure what's going on about this left back position. Lewis Hall seems to be front runner, seems to be the top target now. Travaria seems like it's fallen apart. Arejo never really seemed like the links were that strong. Although we have been linked with him in previous windows, but I don't know, they didn't seem to be going anywhere. Lewis Hall looks like the target. And Newcastle have got a problem. Newcastle are losing so many players. Everyone seems to be leaving Newcastle. They don't seem to be able to keep hold of anyone. They've already lost Anthony Gordon. They are going to lose Bruno Guimaraes one way or another. And it'll be interesting if we could get Bruno Guimaraes, because obviously Enzo's future is uncertain. Guimaraes could potentially be an option, although Newcastle was saying they want around 92 million or something like that. Arsenal have had bids turned down already. It keeps going up and up. Could we do a similar thing to what we did to Rodgers? What we did with Rodgers. Could we swoop in at the last minute, steal Guimaraes from Arsenal? It'd be quite something if we could do that twice to them in a week. But we'll see how that one goes. It's looking low, like Chelsea or Arsenal going head to head for Guimaraes as well. But this one, in the public eye, we swooped in at the last minute and got the Rodgers deal over the line. It looked like Arsenal were getting it done, and Chelsea wasn't even really in the picture anymore. But this looks like it could become a bidding war between the two clubs, and will be interesting to see what the player has to say as well. Whether Guimaraes wants the Chelsea move or wants the Arsenal move, that could come into this as well at some point. So we will see, because personal terms will obviously need to be agreed as well before any move is secured. But if we are to make that move for Guimaraes, I think that would for its definite rule us out the race for Alex Scott, with how much Bournemouth were demanded for him. Now, briefly on Bournemouth as well, Antonio Silva, defender from Benfica, someone who's thought of really highly, valued really highly by the club. His release clause is 25 million, but they want closer to 40. They really do value this player high. They want to get as much as possible, and they're holding out as much as possible. Bournemouth want this player. Bournemouth seems like they're all everyone involved's happy for the move to go through. Although the only thing that is stalled in it is Benfica want him to keep him for the game tonight, where they play in the Europa League qualifier against St Gallen. You can totally understand why they would want keep the hold of the player for that. And it looks like that's going to happen. It looks like he's going to be in the matchday squad and he's going to play tonight, and we'll see what happens after that. Bournemouth could have themselves a new signing on their hands here. Now, as for back to Newcastle as well, there's more links with players like Joe Willock's linked with a move away. There's so many players. I think that Lewis Hall, as I mentioned, so many players linked with a move away at Newcastle. Seems to be turning into a nightmare window for them. And Nottingham Forest are the last club I'm going to speak about today, because there is some more news on them. Obviously, of course, they've got massive money for Elliot Anderson that they can spend. It'll be interesting to see how they choose to spend. They're going to potentially get a similar amount for Gibbs White as well, who Aston Villa are interested in as a replacement for Morgan Rogers, which could be really interesting as well. Be going for one rival to another, and also they for that would give them a lot of money to spend. And we know they're already interested in Diamende. Oliver Glasner really wanted him at Palace, and now he wants to bring him to Forest now. So we'll see if that one can happen there. But yeah, that's what's going on at the moment. That's where it is right now in terms of transfer activity. Certainly from a Chelsea perspective, we seem to be moving in the right direction. There's a few more players we do need to get off the books. I would like to see the Sequoia deal get over the line. The Guimaraes thing's a bit up in the air at the moment. We'll see how that develops over the coming days. Alex Scott seems like it might have fallen through now. That might be the end of that one. But the John Stones thing, I think, could be very interesting. I think we could do something really good there if we could get him on a free, and then that would then we could then maybe pay what Palace want for Lacroix, and then we'll have him with Colwell back from injury as well. Already that back line's looking a lot more strong than it did last season already, and the transfer window is only getting started. So overall, I think we're moving in the right direction here.